Hi friends! I am so excited you're here today because I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite horror books that I've read so far in 2023. I usually wait to do this list like in June, like halfway through the year, but I have to do it the first quarter because I've read a lot of books already this year and I've read a ton of awesome horror books and I'm just so excited to share them with you guys. So going back to January, I read A Nest of Nightmares by Lisa Tuttle. This is on my 23 and 23 like paperbacks from hell list, and I was floored by the first story in this. It is so dark and beautiful, like the writing style just hooked me, also made me feel a bit numb. I had to put it down for a bit and pick it back up. There's some really crazy stories in this. The last story is my favorite, I think, and then there's also one about a horse that I really like. But highly suggest checking this one out if you're looking to start with paperbacks from hell. I think this is a great starting point. Just look up some trigger warnings for it, or you can DM me about it because it's intense at the beginning. Also in January, I ended up reading The Dismembered by Jonathan Janz. This is available on KU. It is a novella. It's a gothic horror, and it's kind of taken like Rebecca and Frankenstein and like mashed them up, and it does have like those really cheesy gothic romance vibes in it as well. As you can tell from the cover, this is like a spoof on like the 70s gothic romance, but it is so freaking gnarly. It is kind of like a revenge trope in it that I really like as well. I'm a sucker for revenge tropes in horror books, and I had a lot of fun with it. Even though there is some romance in this, it didn't bother me. Definitely worth checking out if you like gothic romance, if you like Frankenstein. It was a lot of fun. And you guys know I had to talk about How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. You guys, I'm gonna be transparent here. 100% bias going into this. I'm a huge Grady fan already. Bias number one. Bias number two, this is a spooky doll taxidermy situation. Another situation in this as well. I'm not going to say because it's a bit of a spoiler, but this is about a brother and sister that they're fighting after their parents die suddenly, which seems like very relatable to people, like family drama, like having to deal with grief. This felt so real. Like the characters in this felt very realistic. And I loved the family dynamics so much because it played a huge part in the plot. While the plot itself was very zany at moments and scary, it kept it, the family dynamic parts and situations kept it so grounded and real that you really felt for them, and we were rooting for them. So yeah, 5 stars. Great use of family trauma in this as well, and the ending is wild. It is like a love letter to a paperbacks from hell, but it's done with so much heart, and I absolutely love it. This is my favorite Grady Hendrix books now. After that, it is my best friend's exorcism. So yeah, absolutely loved it. 5 stars, but again, I'm totally biased, right? The next book I absolutely loved was The Change by Kristen Miller. This one was like it's like a mystery, witchy mystery. A group of friends team up to solve some murders in their city, and they like are finding out stuff about them. You know, they're changing, and I absolutely love it. There's a character in this that was just so fantastic and funny. This was just a very easy, almost cozy mystery to me. Like read. It was just like so much fun, and I loved the messages in it, and highly suggest checking this one out if you haven't already. And you guys know I did a clown reading vlog in February. I was in my full clown era. I haven't quite gone back into my clown era yet, but that will be happening later this year for sure. And I ended up reading The Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson, and this was so much freaking fun. If you like a good carnival slasher. I highly suggest this. If you are a big fan of 80s slashers with clowns, I highly suggest this. And there's also a really fun horror subgenre that is a reveal in this that was amazing. I loved how it was a bit genre blending. So it is a slasher, but there is something else going on in it. And it was totally brutal, so gross, gory, cheesy. The imagery in it was fantastic. I felt like I could see like all of the colors like on every single clown in this, and it was just wild and gross, and I loved it. 5 stars. I also ended up listening to Parable the Sower by Octavia E. Butler this past winter, and it bummed me out. I'm not gonna lie. This is a bummer of a book, but it's so good and it's so realistic. Like I could feel it, like this could happen. This is a dystopian sci-fi book that takes place in 2024. This is like next year. I think I messed up in my wrap up and I said this was like from the 80s. It's actually from the 2001 or something. I think it was when it was published, but it feels very realistic. It's very disturbing. There's some intense violence in this book. There's some animal cruelty in this book, so just look up trigger warnings about it. But I love the overall message, and I thought it was executed really well. The writing's fantastic. You like the character a lot. And yeah, highly suggest checking it out if you haven't checked it out yet. I feel like this is on the list of like 100 books to read before you die. It was absolutely fantastic. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is a bit rough. So definitely, if this is not everybody's cup of tea, for sure. Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. This is about 2 serial killers that fall in love? Question mark. One of the serial killers escapes from prison, which seemed pretty zany and very Silence of the Lambs-esque to me. And he finds himself in New Orleans, where he meets another serial killer, and their interests are pretty similar. And then they pick out the perfect victim. I read this for a Halloween vlog. There's not a lot of romance in this for sure. You feel so sad at the end though. I mean, not for the killers of course, but there's like another character in this who you don't feel sympathetic for at all until the very end, and you're like, oh, that's awful. So it's horrible. It doesn't have like the ending you would want it to have at all. It's so nihilistic and dark, but beautiful. It is so well written, and I highly suggest checking this out. If this is your thing, I highly suggest it. The next book I'm going to talk about is actually a sci-fi, fantasy, body horror short stories, Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. This one kind of caught me out of nowhere. I found the audio on Scribd and I was like, oh, I've had this book since it came out, since 2019. I saw people raving about it. I need to get to it. And I'm not a huge short story fan. As you can tell, there's 2 short stories on this list though, so I have found my short stories, I guess, that I really like. This short story collection is amazing. The writing is absolutely gorgeous. Every story for me is at least a 4 or 5 star in it, and the last story, Salt Slow itself, so disgusting, so weird, and I loved it. So highly suggest checking this one out. Yeah, a new favorite. I was talking about this last night at my birthday party, and I was just like, Julia Armfield, and somebody was like, have you read Our Wives Under the Sea? And I was like, not yet, but I will be reading that one very soon. So yeah, I'm excited to read more from this author and highly suggest this as a short story collection. You guys know I was going to talk about this book because I had so much fun with it, and that is episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. This is like a found footage paranormal story, but it does take a turn into another subgenre. And I won't say anything. I'm not even going to say it's my favorite. It's my favorite subgenre. And I just had a blast with it. Does it answer every question in it? Is it pretty ambiguous? Yes. Is it kind of long? Yeah, it's kind of long. But it is an absolute blast, and it also, I think it's long because of the formatting is like a little weird too in it. Well, there's a lot of like text pages, there's like emails, there's tapes, there's singing. Highly suggest the audiobook for this, because the audiobook, they put a lot of production in it to it, and they actually do the singing, they do the sound effects in it, like there's certain parts too where like the voices are echoing, and it's full cast as well. So you're following a TV crew that goes in to film their episode 13, which is at an estate in rural Virginia. The Virginia facts were correct in this as well, which I really liked. And when they're investigating, because in the 70s, a research thing, group of researchers went missing in the house and were never heard from again. And this starts off very creepy. They are interviewing somebody that was at the research house, or was interviewed and experimented on. And that interview is so unsettling and weird, and it is like the perfect amount of foreshadowing done in this book. I think this book is very clever. Is it similar to House of Leaves? Yes, but this is a way more accessible House of Leaves, and I highly suggest checking this one out, and check out the audio book for it. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is actually a YA book called These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall. This book I listened to for my Wednesday Addams reading vlog, where I read a ton of books that I thought Wednesday Addams would be into. Of course, I didn't think she'd be into YA, but I got this loan on Libby, and I was like, it's like a gothic horror book that happens to be YA. I'm not sure she's going to be into it, but I'll read it. And it's kind of similar. It's not very similar. It's kind of similar to the actual plot of Wednesday Addams' show, which I thought was kind of funny. And yeah, so this is about a girl who is going back to her mom's side of the family, like, estate. They're like super rich, and she's told like really detailed things like she has to do every day, kind of like a schedule. So it is very repetitive, but that fits into the plot and the reveal. So I think that's the biggest complaint I've heard about this book, is that it's like very repetitive, but it is so for a reason, and you're kind of like, okay, this is a mystery, like, why does she have to do these certain things? And as stuff is revealed, it gets really crazy. There's some crazy body horror in this that I was not expecting. And also, there's some romance in this that I was not expecting to have feelings as well. I was like, oh yeah, I'm for this ship. Yes, I'm rooting for them, and I'm like, who am I? I'm not bored by this. So yeah, this was a very refreshing YA book for me that has body horror, supernatural elements in it, and mystery. And yeah, I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't already. It is a fun listen. The next book is Jackal by Erin E. Adams. I really liked this book. This book gets weird, and that's why I liked it. But I love all the eeriness and mystery that like builds up the climax in this. This is a great summer horror, or like almost like a vacation horror, I guess, even though our main character is going back home before a wedding. But it gives you like summer vacation vibes a bit. And yeah, there's some really great imagery in this, some gore, and just overall like eeriness, and of course a great allegory in it as well. The horror in this, I feel like is translated in real life, of course, and that social commentary horror can be difficult sometimes, but I think it's done so well in this. And yeah, I absolutely love it. This is about a woman that goes back to her hometown for a wedding, and the bride's child ends up missing, and it's up to the main character to figure out what happened to her. And then she starts to realize that like every year a girl goes missing in these woods. So yeah, so good. The ending is very weird, but I loved it. It was different. It was refreshing. And yeah, 5-star horror read. So the last book I'm going to talk about is definitely not for everyone. This book is difficult to get into. There are no answers in this book. You will have more questions than answers at the end of it. So if you don't like ambiguous endings, this one is not for you. If you don't like reading pretty despicable characters, this one is not for you. If you don't like pretentious writing, this one is not for you. I'm like, everybody, it's not for everybody, but if you do like very weird situations, I read this for Week of Weird in March. That is the Cipher by Kathy Koja. This is such a freaking weird book, but it's so beautiful. The writing is absolutely gorgeous. Once you get into it, it did take me like a chapter or two to get into it, but in my vlog I read like a little paragraph out, and it's just like the most beautiful writing and great imagery that I've read in a really long time. And the story itself can be a bit shocking sometimes. There's some body horror in this. There's some weird stuff in this. It's like very, very weird. Everybody's terrible. And you don't get a backstory on anybody, and this is a short book. And I really liked that. It was like, who cares why they're terrible? They're just terrible. Like, because that's how you encounter other people in life. That's life, right? But basically it's about this couple who are about to break up, or they've just broken up. I mean, they're not in a great situation. They're in like a terrible toxic relationship. Let's just say that. And they discover a hole in their loft, and they start doing experiments with it. There is use of a videotape in this that is done very well. It's so 90s. It's so grimy. You can picture everything in this just being gray and gross. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. This is technically a paperback from hell as well. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I'm excited to read more from Kathy Koja. And yeah, I highly suggest if you're looking for some weird fiction. No, it's horror. Weird horror. Definitely check it out. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite reads so far of 2023. I will have some honorable mentions down in the description box down below, or in the pinned comment, so be sure to check those out. And you guys let me know what your favorite read of 2023 is so far this year. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye!